Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and today I'm going to be looking at the 5 biggest challenges facing Frank Lampard when football eventually returns. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. We're getting into it because of course now Premier League teams have agreed to return to training. This is only phase 1, and what's going to happen with phase 2 and how we will eventually get back onto the pitch and playing Premier League matches seems a little bit away, but I wanted to discuss some things that I think are important and I think are going to be challenging for Frank Lampard and for Chelsea, and some things that I think are going to be key if Chelsea are to be successful for the remainder of the season, if it does eventually get played. So let's get into it. Firstly, number 5, team selection. Team selection is a big thing, and I think it's so unpredictable, not only based on what we've seen this season for Frank Lampard when things are normal, but how is that first team going to line up? Because what you have to assume is it's going to be very different for a lot of teams. There are going to be players who were injured, who were ruled out for the rest of the season, that will now be available. And some of those players are going to benefit Frank Lampard. Will that first team be compiled of players that played in the Everton game back in March? Or will we see some of the injured players who are now back to fitness, the likes of Loftus-CHEEK, Christian Pulisic, Kovacic, back in the starting 11? It's not only based on that, it's also based on how he's going to prioritise the rest of the season in terms of players. Can some of those players returning back to fitness really have key roles, and can they be game changers for Chelsea of getting Champions League qualification? These are all things that I think Frank Lampard is going to have to work with. Hopefully the 5 sub rule will come into play and Chelsea can benefit off that, getting players back to fitness. But there are certain players who will feel they deserve more minutes, like Ross Barkley. I think Ross Barkley is a key figure here because he was coming into some of the best form of his Chelsea career. Number 4 is formation. What will the formation be for Chelsea? It's been 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 3-4-3. Name probably another formation. Chelsea have probably played it under Frank Lampard this season. It's been very unpredictable. It's switched. There has been no one set formation. Luckily for Frank Lampard, he does have some good results and performances to go off the back of before football was suspended, both playing the 4-3-3, which was Chelsea's basically main formation under Maurizio Sarri. And I think for a lot of people, including myself, it's probably the best formation for Chelsea's current squad. But will Frank Lampard, with his aim to be flexible with Chelsea, stick with the 4-3-3, or will he continue to try to use other formations that he feels works? As I said in my previous point, some of those players coming back into fitness now may change the way Frank wants to play, and he may want to bring in a Loftus-Cheek, may want to bring in a Christian Pulisic, and feel that there are different formations that can elevate those players' games. Will Frank Lampard finally settle on one formation for a number of games, or will we continue to switch? That is something we're going to have to find out as well. Number 3 is defence. Chelsea's defence has been a key issue this season in terms of the amount of goals we've conceded, also the chopping and changing in that area, some down to fitness and of course a lot down to form as well. And a bit like the formation, will Frank Lampard finally stick with a settled defence and a settled back 5 as well, including Kepa? In the last 2 games before the Premier League was suspended, he played the same back 5 and we got 2 clean sheets against Liverpool and Everton. That back 5 was compiled of Kepa, Dave, Rudiger, Zuma and Marcos Alonso. Now there are some big players that could still come into play here. Reece James was really finding his feet at right back and we believe will be the long-term right back. Will he come back into the team? Can Andreas Christensen and Fikayo Tomori get more minutes under Lampard? Will they make a way back into his first team? That's another big question. Or will Lampard think to himself, I finally got something working here, I'm going to stick with this with more experience in my back 4 and then change it next season? Number 2 is, I think, a big one for me: intensity and energy. That was something that was lacking a lot, I feel, during the winter months when maybe players fatigued. There was a lot more games, that some of that early season energy had sort of worn off, but we finally got it back just before the Premier League was suspended, which is a bit unfortunate. But Chelsea really did return to that energetic pressing, quick movement that we saw work so well in the first part of the season, and I think it excited a lot of fans, and that was with the inclusion of Billy Gilmour in midfield. I think he really helped that with moving the ball fast from defence to attack. But as well, you saw older players like Willian and Pedro, probably in their last days of being a Chelsea player, really come back to form, and Olivier Giroud as well, I think, really helping out at top. But in terms of just generally, I think the pace and intensity was something that really helped Chelsea, and with players like Christian Pulisic and Loftus-Cheek coming back to fitness, these are 2 players that I think are key to help Chelsea elevate their game to the next level. How key either of them will be in Chelsea's remaining games is yet to be seen. But for me, Frank Lampard's Chelsea has to be intense, it has to be energetic, it has to be fast moving for it to work well, as we saw in those games. And when it isn't there, in some of those really disappointing defeats earlier in the season, season, we see a real drop off, and Chelsea's performance level and results as well tail. So that is something for me that Lampard needs to instill within this team, even in the unpredictable circumstances and sort of weird situation we're currently in. I feel Chelsea need to consistently do that for a number of games if we are to have a successful end to the Premier League season. And lastly, it's consistency, and this links in with Champions League qualification. It's the one thing really Chelsea haven't had since around the October-November time. Chelsea haven't won back-to-back Premier League games since November. That still, of course, is standing, even with the previous 2 wins, which were one in the FA Cup against Liverpool and one in the Premier League against Everton. Chelsea simply need to win back-to-back games, and it's not only about 2 games, it's maybe 3 or 4 games, especially with Man United hot on our heels and other teams as well, still fighting for Champions League qualification. And Chelsea need to be consistent to get Champions League football. It's pretty simple, and it's something they haven't done. And I think all the elements I've talked about, I think are going to come into play here, but I think this is the key thing. If Chelsea continue to be a team that you can't really be certain about what they're going to do week on week, I think Chelsea will drop out the Champions League places. They could be saved by the whole UEFA ban with Man City. A run of 3 to 4 wins might even be enough for Chelsea if other teams like Man United drop points like they have previously. And even though they are still young and Lampard's learning and some of his younger players are learning, if they want to end the season well and we want to get into that Champions League and retain our place at Europe's top table, consistency is the key. So that is the 5 biggest challenges I think facing Frank Lampard when football does return. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.